everyone, welcome back. In case it's a little noisy in the background, you're hearing some banging, slamming, pounding, those kind of noises, well, here's why. As you can see, they're hard at work building our new high school wing, so please forgive any background noises and let's go on to history. Today we're looking at Africa during the era of Rome and even the period before that. In prior lessons, we already talked about Rome, the Americas, Asia. Well, today we're going to look at what Africa was like both before and during Rome. We'll see Africa after Rome in a future lesson. Aren't you always tired of hearing that? When people think about Africa, they often think of Egypt. So let's start there. Egypt was known to the Greeks and Romans as Aegyptus. Aegyptus became a Roman province after Octavian defeated Mark Antony in 30 BCE and forced Queen Cleopatra VII to give up her throne. Aegyptus would serve as one of the breadbaskets of the Roman Empire, providing large amounts of grain and thus food to the empire. Aegyptus was ruled differently than other areas under Roman control. While other regions had a governor appointed by the Senate, Aegyptus was ruled by a prefect who was appointed by the emperor. Under the direction of these prefects, Aegyptus saw a number of expansions in its territory, canals, and agriculture. When the city of Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 CE, many of the Jewish faith moved to the city of Alexandria in Aegyptus, which then became the center of the Jewish faith. A later revolt by the Jews of Alexandria resulted in a crackdown by the prefect and Roman rulers, making life more difficult for the Jews of the city. Another concern for the people of Aegyptus was the issue of taxation. Like most people, they felt they're being taxed unfairly by the government. This resulted in a number of revolts and uprisings against the taxation from Rome. The society of Aegyptus was interesting in that it was comprised of Egyptians, Jews, Greeks, and Romans. There was also a class system within Aegyptus, with the Romans at the top, followed by a Greek from a Greek city, followed by a Greek from Egypt, and lastly by the Egyptians and the Jews. To gain citizenship in the Roman Empire was difficult for Greeks and Egyptians, but distinctly more difficult for Egyptians. The first Christian church in Egypt was founded in 33 CE by Mark the Evangelist. The Egyptian religion, Ra, Isis, those kind of gods, fell by the side and was quickly replaced by Christianity, likely because the focus of Christianity on meekness and poverty was appealing to those poor and disenfranchised of Egypt. The city of Alexandria became home to a large number of Christians and was one of the great centers of Christian learning in that time period. When the empire was divided with the creation of Constantinople and with the fall of Rome in the 5th century, Roman influence over Egypt started to fade. The result of this was a country that would slowly gain its independence and freedom while becoming more Christian. That has its own issues, though, which we'll see later on with the schism. There were many kingdoms in Africa prior to being colonized by the Europeans. Let's go over that material first. Ancient Egypt, of course, is the earliest of these kingdoms, and the Egyptians had agriculture as early as 5000 BCE. In the lower areas of Egypt were the Nubians. The Nubians controlled the areas of the Nile between the 1st and 6th cataracts. Cataracts being large waterfall-like areas, rough whitewater sections. You can see the Nile shown here on a map. Egyptians are often shown historically as looking very white. while in fact there are many ethnic groups within Egypt. The lower areas of the Nile were controlled by the Nubians as far back as 2000 BCE. In 1650 BCE, Egypt withdrew from the Upper Nile, leaving it under control of the Nubians and the Kush. During the mid-700s BCE, the forces of the Nubians and the Kush, under the rule of King Kashta, moved north and started to invade Egypt. In 747 BCE, King Planki, son of King Kashta, continued the invasion of Egypt and conquered it, ruling as pharaoh of Egypt until his death. When he died, he was buried in a pyramid built near the fourth cataract of the Nile. The Nubians continued to rule Egypt until 656 BCE, when the Assyrians at that point conquered Egypt. The Nubians retreated to the Upper Nile, which is the south part of the Nile, and continued to rule that area of Africa from that point on. This object is a stela. The one here is known as the Victory Stela. It is a large piece of stone which was inscribed to tell a story and catalog an event. In this case, it was done to commemorate the victory of King Planki. It is 6 feet high, 4 feet wide, over a foot thick, and weighs 2 1/4 tons. That means it's about 4,500 pounds. In northern Africa was the nation-state of Carthage. It was located in what is now modern-day Tunisia. It was founded in 814 BCE and quickly rose to control the Phoenician colonies that already existed along the northern coast of Africa. This image shows the areas controlled by the state of Carthage. Notice the areas under their control were largely coastal, aside from the 2 islands they control in the Mediterranean Sea and the southern region of what is modern-day Spain. Carthage was in a constant state of war with Rome. As you learned in 7th grade, Carthage fought a series of wars with Rome known as the Punic Wars. Let's talk about Carthage's most famous general, Hannibal. Hannibal, during the Second Punic War, had a brilliant plan. He realized that Rome was waiting for Carthage to attack them by sea, loading all their forces into boats and sailing across the Mediterranean Sea to come attack Sicily and Italy. So instead, he had a really clever plan. He would bring his troops all the way across Africa, up to Gibraltar, cross Gibraltar, and then move his troops there into modern-day Spain and France, attacking Italy from the north, thereby surprising the Romans. This map shows that. For this journey, he brought a massive army that included elephants, and not just any elephants, war elephants. They would look something kind of like this.
Make safe the city!
That was from Lord of the Rings, and actual elephants aren't that big. But imagine how you'd feel being a Roman soldier when suddenly out of the trees comes that charging at you. You've seen a horse, you've seen cows and pigs, you've never seen an elephant before. This massive creature with tusks charging at you, it's going to freak you out. So Hannibal's only issue was he didn't account for geography, especially that of the Alps, the mountain range in southern Europe. His troops were not ready for either the geography, in fact the mountains were tall, they were steep, they were treacherous, or the fact that they were cold. Elephants are in Africa, elephants don't do snow very well. And so by the time his troops made it out of the Alps, they were weak, they were tired, they were hungry, they lost many of their troops, many of their elephants, and his troops were easily defeated, unfortunately, for Hannibal. After the Third Punic War, Carthage was destroyed, and the lands under its control became part of the Roman Empire. But Rome didn't just destroy Carthage. Rome went, basically leveled the city, burned it, and they put salt in the ground all around Carthage. This did two things. One, it killed the current crops that were growing there. Secondly, it made sure no one could plant crops there for generations. This was to show that Carthage defied Rome, and no one should ever do that ever again. Now, moving away from the northern part of Africa, going down into some Central Africa, let's talk briefly about the Nok civilization. The Nok existed from 1000 BCE until 500 CE, when their culture mysteriously vanished. Historians believe they may have actually been absorbed into what is later known as the Yoruba Kingdom. The Nok were one of the earliest peoples to be able to fully sculpt life-size terracotta sculptures, a sample of which is shown here. The Nok also had great ironworking skills, and they were smelting iron as early as 1500 BCE, and using iron then as weapons and tools. Lastly today, we're going to talk about the Bantu people. The Bantu were a culture in West Africa, roughly 3,000 years ago. Between 1000 and 500 BCE, the Bantu people started a slow migration to the east and to the south, moving to new lands across the African continent. As the Bantu moved into areas, they either assimilated, absorbed into their own society, the current inhabitants, or they displaced them, forcing them to move elsewhere within Africa. Today, the major remnant of Bantu civilization is the Swahili language. Swahili is used today by over 150 million people in Africa to communicate on a daily basis. As Bantu spread, they brought with them their culture, their language, and experience with animals and farming. A number of empires will form from these roots later in history across Africa, but that's for a future lesson when we return back to Africa later on. As always, be proud of who you are, and I'll see you next time.